I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My name is Mark, and I was married to Kelly for 5 years. To outsiders, we were the perfect couple. We met in college, both bright-eyed and ambitious. Kelly had come to the U.S. from Canada on a student visa, and after dating for a couple of years, we decided to get married. I thought we were building a life together, but lately, things had started feeling off. Little signs here and there made me uneasy, but I brushed them aside. Love can often blind you to the truth. I remember the first time I noticed something was different. Kelly started coming home later from work. At first, I assumed she was just busy with her job at a marketing firm. But then I noticed she was more secretive with her phone, often texting in another room or suddenly changing the subject when I asked who she was chatting with. I tried to dismiss my growing suspicions, telling myself she was just busy with life. But deep down, I felt an unease creeping in, like shadows lurking around the edges of my mind. One particular Friday evening, as I was winding down from a long week at work, I decided to surprise her by making dinner. I thought it would be a great way to reconnect and maybe rekindle some of the spark we had lost over the years. But when I called her to tell her I was cooking, she hesitated before saying she had to work late again. I could hear the tension in her voice, something I hadn't noticed before. It was like she was hiding something. After she hung up, I felt a pit in my stomach. That night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I accidentally knocked over a stack of her papers on the kitchen counter. Among them was a receipt from a restaurant I didn't recognize, dated for the previous Wednesday. It was an expensive place, one I knew we had never been to together. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, and anger began to bubble up inside me. Why was she eating at a fancy restaurant without me? I tried to push the thought aside, thinking maybe it was a work dinner. But when I searched for the place online, I found photos of it filled with couples, laughing and sharing intimate moments. The nagging feeling intensified, and I began to dig deeper. I went through our shared computer and found emails she hadn't logged out of. My heart raced as I opened one from a guy named Jake, someone I had never heard of. The content was innocent enough, a few friendly exchanges about work, but the familiarity in their words made my skin crawl. The nail in the coffin came when I found a string of messages on her phone. I had no intention of snooping, but in my gut I felt I had no choice. Her conversations with Jake were anything but platonic. They talked about sneaking away for hot weekends and how much fun they had together. I felt sick. I was the last to know, and the betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I confronted her that night. As soon as she walked in, I could see the guilt etched on her face, but she put on her usual act of nonchalance. "Hey babe, what's up?" she said casually, but I could see her eyes flicker as I threw the receipts and messages at her. "Let's not play games, Kelly. Who is Jake?" Her face paled, and in that moment I knew the truth was more painful than I could have ever anticipated. "You don't understand, Mark. It's not what you think," she began, but I didn't want to hear her excuses. The words came tumbling out of her mouth, but they felt like poison. She tried to tell me it was just a fling, just a way to feel alive again. But it didn't matter. She had shattered the trust we built. I felt a storm brewing inside me, the anger mixing with heartache, and I found myself staring at the woman I once loved, realizing that the person standing before me was not who I thought she was. That evening marked the beginning of a tumultuous journey filled with anger, sadness, and confusion. Little did I know, this was only the start of the chaos that was about to unfold as I grappled with what to do next. After that night, everything changed. The home I had once felt was a sanctuary now felt like a battlefield. Kelly's betrayal hung in the air like a thick fog, and every glance, every word exchanged felt like a dagger. I wanted to scream, to curse, to break something, but I also felt the weight of sadness pressing down on me. My world had flipped upside down, and I was still trying to find my footing. The days that followed were a blur. Kelly tried to act as if things could return to normal, but I couldn't even look at her without feeling nauseous. She would come into the living room with her fake smiles, asking if I wanted to watch a movie or go out for dinner. The audacity left me speechless. It was as if she genuinely believed that a few casual gestures could erase the damage she had done. I became a master of avoidance. I'd retreat to my office under the guise of working late, spending hours scrolling through social media, trying to find some comfort in the lives of others. Friends reached out, concerned about my silence, but I couldn't bring myself to share what was happening. How could I explain the crushing weight of betrayal to those who thought I had the perfect marriage? One evening, after returning home from a long day, I found Kelly sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, giggling at something on the screen. It was infuriating. I snapped, "What's so funny, Kelly? Is it Jake?" She looked up startled, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. "Mark, please, can we just talk this out? I made a mistake, I know that." She pleaded, her voice rising defensively. But it wasn't just a mistake, it was a conscious choice she made, and I couldn't let her minimize it. "You think talking is going to fix this?" I shouted, frustration spilling over. "You've shattered my trust. How do you expect me to just forget about it?" She began to cry, and for a moment my heart softened. I wanted to feel compassion, but all I could think about was the image of her with someone else, laughing, sharing secrets, and betraying the vows we had taken. I turned away, wanting to escape the guilt that washed over me for not wanting to comfort her. The emotional roller coaster continued as the days turned into weeks. I was living in a state of denial, torn between the love I still felt for her and the relentless anger that fueled my thoughts. Every time I looked at her, I saw the woman who had deceived me, not the person I once adored. I started to formulate a plan, not just out of anger, but out of a need for control. I couldn't let her think she could get away with this. Maybe this was the wrong mindset, but it became my coping mechanism. I didn't want revenge just for the sake of it. I wanted her to understand the pain she had caused. I began to gather evidence, documenting every lie, every late night, and every interaction she had when I wasn't around. It was during one of those late nights when I stumbled upon something that intensified my resolve. I found a text from Jake that read, "Can't wait to see you this weekend. I'll make it worth your while." I felt my blood boil. What did that even mean? It was disgusting and infuriating, and it further solidified my decision that I couldn't simply forgive and forget. As I plotted my revenge, I focused on what I needed to do next. I started to think about how I might expose her not just to me, but to everyone around her. I knew she had a few close friends who thought of her as the perfect wife. I could envision the looks of shock on their faces when they learned what she had done. Days turned into a blur of planning and executing the next steps. I wasn't sure what the fallout would look like, but I couldn't back down. It was time for Kelly to experience the consequences of her actions in a way that would force her to confront the reality of what she had done. No more hiding behind false smiles or empty apologies. The truth needed to be revealed, and I was going to make sure of that. With my heart racing and the thoughts of revenge dancing in my mind, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt like I was taking control of my life, and nothing was going to stop me from seeing my plan through. As the days went by, I became consumed by my plan. I was no longer the passive husband who had trusted his wife unconditionally. Instead, I morphed into an investigator, determined to gather all the evidence I needed to expose Kelly's infidelity. The thrill of plotting my revenge began to mask the pain of betrayal, driving me forward like a man on a mission. I started by installing a hidden app on my phone that allowed me to track her whereabouts discreetly. I knew it was invasive, but I justified it to myself. If she was going to betray me, then I had the right to know exactly how she was spending her time when she wasn't with me. It was a slippery slope, and I was keenly aware of how low I had sunk, but I felt justified. One Friday evening, I decided to put my plan into action. Kelly had mentioned an after-work happy hour with some coworkers, and I found out through some discreet inquiries that Jake would be there too. My heart raced with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. I told her I was heading out to grab dinner with a friend, but in reality, I was just laying low, waiting for the perfect moment to catch her in the act. The bar was buzzing with laughter and chatter as I took a spot at a table in the corner, my eyes scanning the room for Kelly and her coworkers. I felt like a hawk, ready to swoop down on my prey. As the clock ticked by, I finally spotted her, laughing a little too loudly, her head thrown back in a way that made my stomach churn. Jake was there too, leaning closer to her, whispering something that made her giggle. That was it for me. I felt the anger boiling up inside, and for a brief moment I considered confronting them right then and there. But I knew that my plan needed to be calculated. This moment was just to gather more proof. I pulled out my phone and discreetly snapped a few pictures, capturing the intimate moment that I would later use as ammunition. As the night wore on, I watched them from a distance, my heart pounding in my chest. They shared a plate of nachos, and I could see them leaning into each other, the chemistry evident in their body language. It made me feel sick. I couldn't help but think about the countless times Kelly had said she was working late, when, in reality, she was out with Jake. The lies had piled up like a mountain, and I was determined to bring it crashing down. After a while, I decided to leave the bar and give them time to escalate their flirtation. I drove home, my mind racing with thoughts of how I would confront her. I had the evidence I needed, and I was prepared to lay it all out on the table. I knew the confrontation would be explosive, but I felt a strange sense of relief. I was no longer the victim. I was taking charge. Later that night, I walked in the front door, and to my surprise, Kelly was already home. She looked up at me, her eyes widening slightly as if she sensed something was off. "Hey, how was dinner?" she asked, her voice too cheerful for my liking. "Interesting," I replied, keeping my tone level. I didn't want to give away the storm brewing inside me. "How was yours?" "Oh, it was good. Just the usual crowd," she said, brushing off my question. I could see her fidgeting, and I knew she was nervous. It made me feel a little more confident in my approach. I took a deep breath and decided to drop the bomb. "I saw you tonight at the bar with Jake. You two looked pretty cozy." Her face went pale, and for a split second I could see the panic in her eyes. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, her voice rising in pitch. "It was a work thing, just drinks with coworkers." I cut her off. "Don't lie to me, Kelly. I saw you two sharing nachos and laughing like you were the only two people in the room. Don't insult my intelligence." She looked cornered, her mind racing as she tried to come up with something, anything to defend herself. "I swear it wasn't what you think. I was just trying to have fun." "Fun? Is that what you call it?" I shot back, my voice growing more heated. "Because I call it cheating. You're betraying me with a guy who's clearly not just a coworker." "Mark, please don't do this," she pleaded, but it felt too late for that. The tears streamed down her face, and part of me wanted to comfort her, but I was too raw, too hurt to even consider it. I needed her to understand the gravity of what she had done. I pulled out my phone, showing her the photos I had taken of her and Jake at the bar. "This isn't just a fling, Kelly. This is you choosing to betray me, and you need to face the consequences." She stared at the screen in shock, the color draining from her face as she realized the depth of her lies. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this, Mark. I just wanted to feel alive again. You know how things have been between us." I wanted to scream that it wasn't an excuse, but deep down, I felt the weight of her words. Maybe we hadn't been in a good place, but there was a difference between feeling neglected and cheating. I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and sadness wash over me. This was the moment of truth, and I knew I had to decide what to do next. The shattered trust hung heavily between us, and whatever happened from here on out would determine the future of our marriage. I had to be firm, to show her that consequences awaited her actions. It was time to make a decision, and whatever I chose wouldn't come without its own emotional fallout. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, a palpable mixture of anger, betrayal, and sadness. Kelly stood there, tears streaming down her face, looking utterly defeated. I could see the realization of her actions crashing down on her like waves against a rocky shore. But as much as I felt for her, my heart was still heavy with the weight of her betrayal. I couldn't simply forget what she had done. The scars were too deep. "Mark, I'm so sorry," she cried, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I felt so lonely, and I thought maybe I could find that spark again by sleeping with someone else." I shot back, my voice rising. "That's your idea of finding a spark? What kind of twisted logic is that? I know it sounds bad, but it wasn't like that." "I wasn't thinking straight," she pleaded, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I thought we could work things out after everything. I thought you were going to fix things between us. 2. Her words cut through me. She was trying to shift the blame to make it seem as though our problems justified her actions. So your solution was to go behind my back and betray me. You think that's how we fix things? By lying and sneaking around. I could feel the anger boiling up again, and I struggled to keep my emotions in check. I had to remain composed, even as I felt the foundation of my life crumbling beneath me. I can't even begin to understand how you thought that was acceptable, Kelly. We had problems, but you didn't come to me. You chose deceit over honesty. I was scared, Mark, scared of losing you, she exclaimed, her voice cracking. I thought if I had a little fun, you'd realize how much you meant to me. I thought it would remind you of the good times we had. Fun? You call cheating fun? I felt like my head was spinning. You don't get to manipulate me into feeling sorry for you. You made your choice, and now you have to own it. Her sobs filled the silence as I felt the emotional weight of the moment pressing down on me. I had never wanted to confront her like this. I had always imagined that our conflicts would be resolved through open communication and love, but now it was clear that we were worlds apart. Despite the anger coursing through my veins, a part of me still wanted to comfort her, to hold her and tell her everything would be okay. But I knew that wouldn't solve anything. It would only allow her to avoid the consequences of her actions. I had to be strong. I had to show her that there was a line that couldn't be crossed. I can't do this anymore, Kelly, I said finally, my voice low but firm. I can't just pretend that everything is fine. I need time to think about what I want. This isn't something we can just fix overnight. Please don't say that, she begged, reaching out for me. I flinched, not wanting her touch. I love you, Mark. I made a mistake and I'll do anything to make it right. Love doesn't justify betrayal, I replied, shaking my head. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You would have come to me with your feelings instead of running to another man. She sank to the floor, her back against the wall, tears flowing freely. I know, I messed up. Just give me another chance. I can prove I'm still the woman you fell in love with. The desperation in her voice tugged at my heartstrings, but I had to stay strong. You've broken my trust, Kelly. It's not just going to magically fix itself because you say you're sorry. I need space to figure this out. I walked past her, my heart heavy as I headed to the living room. I needed to process everything to decide what the future held for us. As I sat on the couch, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I had once envisioned a future filled with love and happiness, but now that future felt uncertain. Hours passed as I sat in silence, replaying the events of the night over and over in my mind. I could hear Kelly sniffling in the background, and despite the anger, I felt an ache for her. I loved her that much. Was still true, but love couldn't excuse her actions or erase the pain she had caused me. I thought about our life together, the dreams we had shared, the laughter, the plans for the future. I thought about the vows we had exchanged, promises that now felt hollow. Could I really move past this? Would I ever be able to trust her again? In the quiet of the night, I made a decision. I knew I couldn't confront her right then and there. The emotions were still too raw. Instead, I would take a step back and evaluate what I wanted. I needed to give myself space to heal, to think about whether this relationship was worth salvaging. The next morning, as the sun streamed through the window, I knew I had to tell Kelly my decision. I needed to be clear about where I stood. It was time to confront the reality we faced and decide whether we could rebuild or if it was time to walk away. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the conversation that would shape the next chapter of our lives. The morning light flooded our living room, illuminating the remnants of the night. Before, the tension still clung to the air like smoke, and as I prepared myself for the conversation with Kelly, I felt both dread and resolve. I knew I couldn't prolong this any longer. It was time to make my feelings known. I found her sitting on the edge of the bed, her eyes puffy and red from crying. She looked up at me, a mixture of hope and fear etched on her face. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Kelly, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm but measured. Okay, she replied cautiously, wiping her eyes. I'm ready to listen. I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Last night was a lot to process. I'm still hurt and angry about what happened, and I need you to understand that this isn't something I can just overlook. "I know," she said softly. "I'll do anything to make it right. I swear I'll change. Please just give me another chance." Her desperation tugged at my heartstrings, but I had to remember how deeply she had hurt me. "Kelly, it's not that. Simple, you've broken my trust, and trust is everything in a marriage. You went behind my back, and that's not something that can be repaired overnight." "I know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "But I love you, Mark. I made a terrible mistake. I promise I'll go to counseling. We can work on our issues together. I'll do whatever it takes." I nodded, contemplating her words. "I know you're willing to do those things, but we need to be realistic. How can I be sure that this won't happen again? How do I know that you won't find another excuse to stray when things get tough?" Her silence was deafening, and I knew she was grappling with the weight of her own betrayal. "I can't change the past," she finally said, her voice breaking. "But I can show you I want to change for the future. I want us to build something stronger together." I appreciated her willingness to fight for our relationship, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the damage was already done. "Kelly, I need time to think. I can't make a decision right now. I need to figure out what want." "Please don't say that," she pleaded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I can't lose you. You're everything to me." I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who had promised to be my partner for life. "I know this is hard, and I wish things were different, but I can't ignore how deeply you've hurt me. I need to step back for a bit." "Step back?" She sounded incredulous. "What does that mean? Are you saying you want to separate?" "I don't know, Kelly. I just need some time away from you to think clearly." My voice cracked as I said it, but it felt like the only option left. "Mark, please," she begged, "just give it some time. We can fix this together. It doesn't have to end like this." Her pleas tugged at my heart, but I stood my ground. "I'm not saying it's over, but I need space to figure out what I truly want. I can't make a decision in the heat of the moment. I need to reflect on how I feel about everything." She nodded slowly, her face falling in defeat. "I understand," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll give you the space you need, but I hope you come back to me. I can't lose you." The weight of the moment settled heavily on my shoulders. I stood up, feeling a sense of finality in my decision. "I'll be staying at my brother for a while," I said, my voice steady. "I need time to think." The silence stretched between us as I grabbed a few essentials, but my heart felt heavy. This was one of the most difficult moments of my life. I loved her, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that we were on two different paths now. As I walked out the door, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew I needed to focus on myself first. Over the next few days, I stayed with my brother, trying to find clarity amid the chaos of my emotions. I spent hours thinking about our life together, the good times, the laughter, and the love we had shared. But I also faced the reality of her betrayal, and I realized how deeply it affected me. I sought solace in my brother's company, talking about my feelings, trying to process everything. He listened patiently, offering support without judgment. "You need to do what's right for you, man," he said one evening as we sat on his porch, drinks in hand. "You don't owe her anything until you're ready to move forward." Those words echoed in my mind as I navigated the complexity of my emotions. I felt lost but also strangely empowered. I was taking the time to rediscover myself, to reassess my priorities, and to think about what I truly wanted. As the days turned into a week, I began to realize that I couldn't keep going back to the idea of what was without acknowledging what is. I needed to focus on my own healing first, to determine whether the love we had built was worth fighting for. The answer was slowly becoming clearer, and I could feel the weight of my decision looming closer. I knew I had to face Kelly again soon, but for now, I would allow myself this time to think, to breathe, and to find my way back to solid ground. The journey of healing was just beginning, and I was determined to see it through. After a week of reflection, I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation as I prepared to see Kelly again. The time away had given me space to think, but it hadn't made the decision any easier. I still loved her, but the hurt of her betrayal lingered like a ghost, haunting my thoughts. I had to confront the truth of our relationship. Could we rebuild the trust that had been so recklessly shattered? I scheduled a time for us to meet at our favorite coffee shop, a neutral ground where we had shared countless laughs over lattes and pastries. As I walked in, I felt a rush of nostalgia, but the bittersweet memories were now tainted with the reality of our situation. I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a warm mug, her eyes scanning the room anxiously. The sight of her stirred a mix of emotions inside me. "Hey," I said softly as I approached. She looked up, and for a moment I saw the warmth that had drawn me to her in the first place. But beneath that warmth was a layer of uncertainty, and I knew we had a long way to go. "Hi," she replied, her voice shaky. "I was worried you wouldn't come." "I needed time to think, Kelly," I said, taking a seat across from her. "And honestly, I'm still processing everything." "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just want you to know how truly sorry I am. I never meant to hurt you. I was lost and made a horrible mistake." Her sincerity resonated with me, but I couldn't ignore the reality of her actions. "I believe you're sorry," I replied cautiously. "But it's going to take more than words to rebuild what we had. Trust isn't something that can be fixed with apologies. It's going to take time and effort." "I'm willing to do whatever it takes," she said, her eyes pleading. "I'll go to counseling, and I'm committed to working on our issues. I want to be better for you and for us." I could see the determination in her eyes, but I was still haunted by the betrayal. "I need to know that you're committed to this, Kelly, that you understand the gravity of what you've done. I can't move forward without that assurance." "I do understand," she insisted, her voice earnest. "I've been doing a lot of soul-searching while you were away. I realized that I had been so focused on what I felt was missing that I lost sight of how good we really were together. I don't want to lose that again." Her words struck a chord, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a chance for us after all, but hope alone wouldn't be enough. I needed to see action. "It's going to take time for me to trust you again," I warned. "And I don't want our relationship to be built on fear or insecurity. If we're going to move forward, it has to be on a solid foundation." "I get that," she replied, her eyes steady. "I'll do everything I can to show you I'm committed to this. I don't want to be the person who hurt you. I want to be the wife you deserve." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. I could feel the tension easing slightly, but doubt still lingered in the back of my mind. "I need to take this one step at a time," I admitted finally. "If we're going to work on things, I want us to start with counseling immediately. We need to tackle the underlying issues that led us here." "I agree," she said, her voice filled with relief. "I'll find a therapist, and we can start as soon as possible." As we talked more about the steps we could take together, I began to feel a sense of cautious optimism. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and there would be days filled with uncertainty, but maybe there was a chance to rebuild what we had lost. We finished our drinks, and as we walked out into the sunlight, I felt a small sense of hope blossom inside me. Nothing was guaranteed, but we were both willing to fight for our marriage, and that was a start. Later that evening, I found myself reflecting on the tumultuous journey we had been through. The experience had been painful, but it also forced me to reevaluate my own strength and what I truly wanted in life. I learned that love is not always enough. It requires trust, communication, and a willingness to grow together. As I tucked myself into bed that night, I thought about the road ahead. The path wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face the challenges with newfound resolve. In that moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Whatever the future held, I knew I had the power to shape it, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could emerge stronger on the other side. Life had dealt me a hard hand, but I was ready to play the cards I had been given. The journey was far from over, but I felt more prepared than ever to navigate the complexities of love, trust, and forgiveness. In the end, I learned that sometimes, it's in our darkest moments that we find the strength to rise again.